Fortress Earth Dreamland is the original work of Travis Hightower. All photos and artwork are either in the public domain or are accredited with permission. This work is licensed by Creative Commons. Please feel free to download and share, but do not reproduce, modify, or sell this work without the express written consent of the author. Fortress Earth Dreamland by Travis Hightower. Chapter 1. Out of the Blue. Blue. There is no end to this blue, he thought. The ocean far below gave no indication of his tremendous speed through that limitless hue. The only interruption in color came from the occasional wispy thin white cloud as the afternoon sun glinted off tiny ice crystals. Duke Devron expanded his awareness as far as he could see out into the horizon. Part of his cognizance included his flight lead, riding in the F-15C, just a 45-degree glance to his left. He flicked his eyes down to a miniature green square screen just above his left knee and took note of what his radar was telling him as the Airborne Warning and Control System controller buzzed information into his ears. Today was his check ride. This air-to-air fight would pit 4 F-15 Eagles against 4 F-18 Hornets. His performance in the dogfight would display to his instructors that he was ready to move on to the operational level. It was the type of test that stuck with you the rest of your career.
"Fights on!"
came the radio call, the verbal starting gun. Every radio repeated those words in succession, and the blue resonated with the rolling thunder of 8 aerial gladiators hurtling their jets across the sky at combat speed. The mission was simple enough. Victory meant stopping 4 adversaries from reaching a point in space and deploying imaginary bombs on a simulated target. Duke went over the timeline for the intercept in his head once more as he confirmed the new information the AWACS controller was feeding him. The 4 F-15s would operate in pairs, each including a student and an instructor. Each pair would simulate taking long-range missile shots, and then close to within visual range if any of the enemy managed to evade the initial salvo. The Hornets were still over their starting point in the south at the moment, preparing their formation before they made their run for the target. A voice crackled over the inter-flight comm channel.
"All right, let's go around again, Sammy,"
said his flight lead and instructor, Major Dan Otter Fuller.
"Copy,"
Duke replied. Sammy was short for his tactical call sign, Samurai, given to him because of his obsession with Japanese martial arts. Duke liked the name as he considered the tactics of flying a fighter plane in battle to be simply an extension of his art. Battles in general depended on who could win the chess match in proper targeting, attacking from correct distance, and executing with perfect timing. Duke rolled his jet fighter, his sword cutting through the great blue, and prepared to make sure he started with proper targeting. As they turned north, Duke knew that the other pair of F-15s would be turning back south to keep an eye on the adversary formation. It wasn't altogether necessary to run a defensive combat air patrol this way, he knew, because the E-3 AWACS, whose call sign today was Chalice, would be able to see everything and keep them updated with both audio and digital information. However, it was always nice to have weapons and radar pointed at the enemy. Major Fuller said,
"Passing,"
on the control frequency that all 4 F-15s and the AWACS controller were listening to. This was simply a timeline management call that meant that the 2 pairs of F-15s were now parallel to each other in their orbit. Duke could just make out the gray specks that were the other pair of Eagles in the sky to his left. Captain Carl Fox Witten was flying the lead aircraft of the other flight, and his student was Duke's good friend, Lieutenant Mindy Mittens McAllen. Duke and Mindy were both members of the 60th Fighter Squadron, better known as the Fighting Crows. Today, the pilots of the F-15s were using the squadron's namesake as their call signs. The aircraft would be referred to on the control channel as Crow 1 through 4. Duke jumped a little as the noise of the AWACS controller's voice interrupted the zen and peace of his quiet cockpit. The crisp male voice updated the location of the adversaries, who had crossed into friendly territory and were now considered hostile according to the rules of engagement for this fight. They were coming in as a tight group of 4 at 27,000 feet. Captain Witten's voice was next to be heard.
Crow 3 committed. 4, you sort the eastern contacts. I have the western.
This meant that the other flight was targeting the hostiles and was preparing a firing solution. Duke had great faith that Mindy could accomplish this quickly. He had known her practically his whole Air Force career, after all, and she was nothing if not the most efficient pilot he knew in his age group. Duke buckled his oxygen mask into place over his chiseled facial features as he tightened formation with his own flight lead. It would be time to turn back into the fight scene.
Crow 3, Fox 3.
Captain Witten announced, sounding very gruff on the radio and using the pilot term for a long-range missile shot. A moment later, Mindy's crisp alto voice chimed in with,
Crow 4, Fox 3.
The computers on each of their planes began tracking the simulated missile shots. Duke waited patiently for the Crows 3 and 4 to guide their missiles by the book. After several long heartbeats, Duke at last heard the words he was listening for.
Crow 3 out.
Followed by,
Crow 1 is in.
and he felt his jet tug at him as he turned to meet the hostiles. Duke noted his lead was climbing and felt his belly drop as he climbed his aircraft to follow. The jet screamed skyward. Duke locked the easternmost target using a kind of miniature mouse by his thumb on the throttle in his left hand. This controlled a small cursor on the small green radar screen. He briefly checked to make sure he had long-range AMRAAM missiles selected one last time and prepared to fire. I'm Travis Hightower, and I hope you've enjoyed this installment of Fortress Earth Dreamland. Big thank you to the many talented artists that are contributing work to this project or have allowed their art to be included. Please make a note of their names in the credits and visit their websites. Very special thank you to Lindsay Sterling for allowing her music to be included in the soundtrack. Make sure you guys check out her YouTube page, and be sure to check out her album, Lindsay Sterling, on iTunes. Stay tuned to my channel for future updates on Fortress Earth, as more installments will be coming soon.